Hello and welcome to Noodly Bits for the Tea Garden Jazz Camps put on by the Sacramento Traditional Jazz Foundation. And let me start by saying I'm really sad we can't be together this year. I'd much rather be in Sly Park with you, but seeing that we can't, we will do the best under the circumstances. So in the first session of Noodly Bits, we're going to basically run through some very basic concepts, and this is really for beginner players, players who haven't been playing very long, perhaps players who don't have a private instructor, and you might not have been informed of this information. So the first thing I want to talk about is transposition. If you play the clarinet or the saxophone, you're a transposing instrument, which means your music, to play the same notes, so they sound the same, is going to be different, for instance, to the flute player or the piano player or the guitar player in a band. It's going to look different. So if we have a piece here that we play often at Jazz Camp, this one's called All of Me. And right here I'm showing you the concert part, and as you can see, the key signature, we're in the key of C, no sharps, no flats. And if I play this piece of music for you, I'm going to try and play it on the flute because it's a C instrument. It's a good example. It sounds like this. That's just the first phrase, okay? Now, if I took that same music and played it on my clarinet, it's going to sound like this. Can you hear how it is in a different key? So if I read this C note on the music here, it on the clarinet is, but if I read the C note on the same piece of music with the flute, can you hear it's a tone difference? If I did the same thing on the alto saxophone or the baritone saxophone, again, it would sound different. That's because we transpose. So make sure when you play in band and play in jazz band that you get the part of music that's correct for you. If we're playing All of Me, the flute players will get the concert music. If we're playing the clarinet, tenor saxophone, soprano saxophone, even the trumpet, you get a B-flat instrument part. And it has two sharps, and we're in the key of D. And as you can see, that's up one whole tone from C. If you take your C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, etc., D is one whole tone up. If you're an alto or baritone saxophone player, I know it says alto here, but this is alto or baritone, you have three sharps and you're in the key of A. All right? So you have to apply these three sharps and play this piece written here. And then we will all be playing the same music together. So that's a little bit of information on transposing. I think it's important for you to understand that and understand that your music will look different and have different notes to the C instruments, the flutes, the pianos, the guitars, the basses, etc. As I go on to my next topic, which is scales. In band, your band director may instruct you all to play a B-flat major scale, and yet, if you're a clarinet player, you start on your note of C. And if you're an alto or baritone saxophone player, you start on your note of G. So here is a perfect example of playing, transposing to play the same sound. So we all sound the same. So the flutes will be playing a B-flat major scale, which has two flats. The clarinets will be playing a C major scale, as will the tenor saxophone, which has no sharps, no flats. And the alto saxophones will be playing a G major scale, which has one sharp, F sharp. So by now, I'm sure you've all experienced that. So my next topic of discussion in this little session will be scales. Scales, while we all should build our fundamentals, scales also help us with our ears to recognize different intervals in pieces of music and recognize pieces of music. So one of the important things about practicing your scales is that you get a sense of dexterity and also the sound of a major scale so that you can play that major scale anywhere, or at least recognize what a major scale sounds like anywhere. I'm going to play you a few different major scales on my clarinet. And here we go. I'm going to start with that major scale, the B-flat concert or my C major scale. All right, you hear that sound? Now if I play now my G major scale, or my B flat major scale, can you hear how they all sound the same? Meaning the intervals, the difference between each note in the scale creates the same sound to you. So in playing your major scales, it'll help you hear the intervals in songs that you play. Here's a great thing to do with your major scale. Take a major scale, for instance. Let's go back to that easy one of our C major scale. And let's think about songs that we possibly know or that are familiar to us that use a major scale. One that jumps out to me immediately, because it's exactly a descending C major scale, or any major scale for that matter, is the Christmas song Joy to the World. Let me play it for you. So that was the C major scale going downwards, right? So if I were to play that in the key of D, here's a D major scale. We have 12 different notes in our chromatic scale, or 12 different notes in Western music that keep being repeated in different octaves. We can play that in 12 different keys. We can go around our instrument and play that. But the point is that you recognize the major scale in different pieces of music. Here's one I'm sure you've probably heard before. Going back to C, for me. All right, that's from The Sound of Music, Do a Dear. It takes a few twists and turns later on, but that first phrase, it's all the major scale. What about another one? What about a nursery rhyme? Does anybody know Frère Jacques or Brother John? We can put that in all 12 keys and it's always going to sound the same because the intervals of the major scale are always the same. Now, you might not know these songs, but you might know other songs, Ode to Joy, things that use a major scale and that are quite obvious. I just want you to start recognizing that sound, the sound of the major scale, because that's very important to us in playing jazz down the track, knowing and hearing, using our ears and hearing those intervals. So we start with a major scale. Major scale practice work, we need to be able to build our dexterity, and that will be another session here for the videos of Noodly Bits. But I just wanted to give you two things to think about: how we transpose and about major scales, learning your major scales. So Anita here signing off for Noodly Bits, and I'll see you in the next session.